am wishing you a wonderful and safe Sunday. I am Kim Castor, a meteorologist at KHOU 11 News in Houston, Texas, and I've got the latest update on Fiona that has now turned into a Category 1 hurricane. Here's what we're watching right now. It certainly has gained quite a bit of intensity in terms of the convective activity and in evening itself out. We saw a lot of the convection favoring the east side of the storm. Now we can see a lot of that wraparound convection happening on the west side too, and we're getting some rotation, and now wind speeds have increased, sustained maximum speeds at 80 miles an hour, and it continues to move towards this west-northwest trajectory at 8 miles an hour. Let's look at a different vantage point here to look at some of the dry air and the moist air. It's doing a good job of keeping that moist air close to it and conserving that angular momentum. It's that spin, that consolidated spin that allows for it to work like the mechanism it is, absorbing that moisture and pumping out quite a bit of fuel. That translates to heavy torrential rain for Puerto Rico and for portions of the Dominican Republic here coming up later today and into the early portion of tomorrow. We're also watching pressure drop. It's now dropped to 987 millibars. And then look at visible satellite imagery shows it's got a wide range. So those outer bands are definitely pumping out quite a bit of rain already getting to the Dominican Republic. But you'll notice the main energy of the system, the rotational component of it, over Puerto Rico. Now, I'm paying close attention to the position of this storm because that's going to really determine which areas receive the most watchful eye and which areas are going to be most at risk. Right now, Puerto Rico is at top of mind because of where Fiona is located. It is predominantly to the south of the island nation and working a little bit towards the west side of the island nation. So towards the bottom, and you'll notice that the rotation is favoring the dirty side to hit the island. Now, what I mean by that, because a couple of you asked what that means, angular momentum is the concept of which side of an area that's rotating gets the most spin, the most push, the most uplift, the most energy. If you're thinking about swinging an object around, well, as it's swinging on the west side, it's gaining speed, gaining momentum, and as it whips around, that's the area that gets the most push, the most gravitational force, and the most momentum. So the same deal happens with a cyclone, with a tropical hurricane, a system like this that's spinning in this counterclockwise rotation. It's gaining intensity here, and then once it whips around, that's when it has the most force. So on the east side, the northeast quadrant of a hurricane has the most potency, the most potential for storm surge impacts, for torrential downpours. And that's what we are going to be watching when it comes to Hurricane Fiona and its impacts in Puerto Rico. Here's a live look at radar from the station in Puerto Rico. You can certainly see that although that center of circulation, that eye, isn't very well defined on visible satellite imagery, you can definitely see the break, the subsidence, the dry sinking air in the center of the storm, and then those heavy convective bands right where we expect them to be, the northeast quadrant of the storm, dumping down the very heavy rain that's already prompting flash flood warnings in several spots along the east coast of the island, along the southern portion of the island. Again, because of the positioning, the storm is to the west of the island nation. It's to the south of it too, and so that allows for the majority of Puerto Rico to be hit with the strongest forcing rain and forcing wind from what is now Hurricane Fiona. So how much rain are we talking about? Well, for the Dominican Republic, we're looking at between 4 to 6 inches of rain, but very impactful, dangerous torrential rainfall rates expected for Puerto Rico. Upwards of a foot of rain for many areas. A couple of localized spots could see upwards of 20 inches of rainfall. And so this is something that's going to cause concern for mudslides. Puerto Rico has some hills and valleys, and so the uneven terrain causes the concern for that water to just wipe away in the debris and come running down. That also causes concern for what's happening down at the surface level with flash flooding, which is why we're already seeing warnings of that popping up. Now that torrential rain will continue for several more hours, and so we'll continue to see those rainfall rates stack up and it's going to be something that is coupled with some whipping wind. So which areas look to get not only tropical storm but hurricane force winds? Well, Puerto Rico experiencing that right now. The U.S. Virgin Islands also experiencing that. A little bit later on today, the focus is going to shift towards the eastern part of the Dominican Republic, which has a very good probability to see those whipping winds. And then you'll notice the probability starts to drop off for the central portion of the Dominican Republic and towards Haiti as we head into the later part of Sunday, early part of Monday. And the reason for that is the positioning of Hurricane Fiona. It's just going to be moving a little bit further towards the east, and so these areas won't get the more impactful of the wind. Right now, Puerto Rico as well as the Dominican Republic have those hurricane warnings up. They will be bracing for the majority of the impacts when it comes to Hurricane Fiona. But as it progresses, it's certainly causing concern for various other regions. And I'll show you which areas I'm going to be focused on in the days to come and why. So Puerto Rico, I explained, it's on the dirty side. It is getting the impacts from the northeast quadrant of the hurricane, which has the most momentum. Now, the Dominican Republic, you'll notice Hurricane Fiona is going to pass towards the east. So it's actually on the west side, the side that has lesser impacts, the side with less momentum, less intensity. However, because it is so close to it, because it's potentially going to pass right over it, it definitely will see some impactful winds and some heavy downpours because of the closeness of the hurricane and its track. Now, moving on a little bit later on into the start of the work week, Tuesday morning, Fiona is expected to intensify into a Category 2 hurricane. Now, notice Turks and Caicos has a tropical storm watch up. It could upgrade that as it gets closer to the area, but right now the track is staying towards a little bit further off to the east, and that means that it's going to get lesser of a direct impact. And you'll also notice it remains on that westerly path. So the area, again, that has a little bit less intensity because it's the area that is on the west side, not the dirty side, not the east side of that hurricane. Now, Wednesday morning, and as we move on, we're going to see the intensity of Fiona continue to grow, and it's because it's traveling through open water. It's got uninterrupted terrain at this point in time, and because of that, Bermuda is going to be a concern a little bit later on this week come Friday morning. And the reason for that is, once again, Bermuda is going to be situated on the east side of the storm. So as it passes, it could potentially be in a danger spot, so to speak. So we'll have to watch that very closely. The track continues to favor away from the continental U.S. Although I will mention the way that Fiona is moving rather slowly, west-northwest at 8 miles an hour, it's mainly going to parallel land, and for that reason, it's not really going to encounter frictional disruptions, and that's why it's expected to continue to intensify in a much more uninterrupted fashion. The reason why it's not expected to come near the continental U.S. is because of two big blocking patterns that will help maneuver this hurricane out of our vicinity. So high pressure systems are areas of dry sinking air, and they are very rigid areas that don't allow for a system to sneak in or filter in. Now, this area of high pressure, the Bermuda High, is going to start to see a little weakening here as we start off the work week. That will allow an opening for Hurricane Fiona to start to lift, to start to rise. This is a pathway of less blocking, dry, rigid air. So with this opening, it'll start to lift, and then notice what happens as we head into the middle and end of this coming week. We also see a trough and a front associated with that. That's something we want to see, because as this tropical system, as this hurricane approaches Bermuda, the last thing we want to see is an intensifying storm that stays parked over a landmass. We do not want to see that scenario set up. That's when we start to get into very dangerous conditions with repeated devastating rainfall rates. So we want to see something that will take this out of the way, and that's what we're expecting to see. A trough, a dip in the jet stream will cause lifting. That's what a trough does. It's a void of air in the upper levels that sucks up systems. So what we'll see Thursday morning, as this trough sweeps in, as this front gets close to the hurricane, it will finally lift it up to the northeast and away from Bermuda. And again, we stay with a very rigid area of high pressure, steering any kind of moisture away from the deep south. In Texas, we won't be seeing any tropical impacts as we head into this week because of that. Looking forward in time, there is a wave that we are watching in the central Atlantic. It has a probability of development over the next 5 days, but for now, it is not of concern. It is unorganized and it has a long ways to go to gain any sort of intensity. For now, we will continue to watch Hurricane Fiona. The next full forecast coming later this afternoon and into this evening, and we'll continue to update on the path that is expected to take. But for right now, because it's been intensifying and because it is being influenced by the upper level steering currents, those big blocking areas of high pressure, we can be hopeful that the impacts will be lessened because it'll steer that to the north and then hopefully lift it out to the northeast away from Bermuda later on this week. But those will definitely be areas we want to be very mindful of. Puerto Rico and Bermuda being on the east side of that hurricane will be something we want to watch. And of course, the Dominican Republic getting very close to that track. Turks and Caicos, not as close, but still in the path. Be sure to follow me on social media. I will be giving you updates as I receive them. I am on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. In fact, I got one of your questions on Instagram yesterday, which asked, what is the dirty side? Can you explain that? And hopefully I did that here. If there is still any confusion, please be sure to send me a message. Otherwise, stay weather smart, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.